Okay. Can you all hear me? Yes. So, let's begin with metaphysics. What we learn about metaphysics, that I shouldn't have trashed God so much in the beginning of the semester. And God was merciful. It started only by making me sick for 3 weeks, and I didn't learn my lesson, so now we have the strike. So from now on is only you and I, which is okay. We'll have fun. It will be okay. It seems that they will not come back, our TAs. They are worried, they are sad. It feels strange for them to suddenly disappear, assuming that that the story will not be resolved. But I told them not to worry, and we are lucky because they left everything perfectly organized. And I have all the information. I'm still learning to use the the New York class, the NYU classes, and all the tools that I never used. It's always the TAs that, but I'm learning slowly. But I have all the Google Docs and everything, and all their notes. And most of the grading is already done. I don't know if most, but yeah, most, because almost all of the Gaddafis have been graded. And again, all the everything that has been done until now in your groups, in your EDM groups, everything is. They have been writing and reporting everything. Now, please don't email them. Let's respect them. Let's support them. They feel they feel conflicted, because if you email them, they will feel like answering and helping, and let's not put them in this situation. Obviously, you can talk to them about anything if it's not about work, okay? So from now on, talk only to me. I am at your disposal. You have my cellular. Text me anytime about anything. I answer. I have 4 office hours every week. I send an announcement. I'll send it again. I put my communication with you my top priority right now. I'm trying to answer all emails as soon as possible. Now, the silver lining is that I will do the grading, which is good news for you, obviously, because their strike must not and will not impact your grades. But not only that, I cannot help myself. I am a too generous grader. I always feel I want to give the best grades I can to you. So this is maybe for the university I am a problem, but not for you. Now, the only problem with that is that it will take me a lot of time. I have more than 300 students, and it will take time to finish all the grades, but I will start with the seniors because they need their grades as fast as possible. Now, I am still trying to think about how to change things to facilitate for you and to finish this semester in a technically plausible way, which means that no, first of all, I will continue my lectures, and especially here in the end, this was the most important part from my side. This is the meat that I most wanted to plunge into, because it's the most interesting part. Reasoning, decision making, causality, and all the stuff that we'll start talking about today. And I will not let this mess bite on the content. Now, regarding the Gaddafis, I will probably, I still haven't, but maybe already today, I will probably make the Gaddafi, change the Gaddafi grade as your best 4 grades. You still, I think I'll still maintain one last Gaddafi, optional. The deadline will be the last day of the semester. But if yes, you have only one more Gaddafi to submit if you want. Regarding the EDM, for now, nothing changed apart from the fact that the presentations, all the presentations will be recorded. You will record the presentations. But let's see, maybe I'm still thinking, maybe, and I want to hear what you think. I want to think together with you other possibilities to see what else can be done to facilitate this entire process, okay? So things may still change in the next days. Whatever change, it will be only to facilitate, all right? What else? What else? So I hope, so I slept only 4 hours last night. You can imagine, I am deep underwater with the bureaucracies and trying to understand what will be, although, again, I think that it's pretty much, I am assuming it's clear that the strike will not end soon, and not until the end of the semester. Sorry, let me open the chat because I see that people are writing. I cannot see it. Chat. The weekly feedbacks remains the same. You have until the end of the semester to complete 10 weekly feedbacks. It's simple. It's one sentence per question. It can be about my lectures, it can be about the book, it can be about any content. It's 10 points for free. Just fill it, okay? Regarding the recorded presentation, yes, theoretically, it was it is supposed to be what we planned since the beginning. Well, the original plan, it comes from before the remote stuff that we used to have, the last recitations, that each group gives a 5-7 minutes presentation in front of everybody, and then we have a few questions and discussions, and it's fun and interesting, and we talk, and I usually give a small lecture about how to present, but with this remote mess it's even more complicated. And then with all the asynchronous, we said, okay, so maybe whoever wants or needs will record instead of present. But now, let's see, we just have to do 8 for all the 10. I think it's all 10, right? We didn't change it. I think it's the all 10 feedbacks. Please correct me. We changed to 8 weekly feed. I'll check. Let me write it down. Maybe I'm confused. If yes, I apologize. Anyways, it's so it's 8. So it's 8. But I'll check. So it's 8. If it's 8, it's 8. But it's simple. It will take you 2 minutes. Just fill the questions about any content that you want. So check 8 week feedbacks. 8. If it's 8, it's 8. So let's see, regarding the presentations, maybe we will, if it gets complicated and it's not, and we don't profit from and there is no, maybe we won't have present. I haven't this. Let me think about it. I want also to whoever, please stay with me after the lecture into my office hours. Let's talk about it. Let's think together. Maybe we don't need the presentation. Maybe it's only mess and. If we are happy with, we don't have to do. Yes. If, and I think I don't promise, but I think it will be your best 4 grades. And if you already have 4 grades, you don't have to do any more Gaddafis. Yes. For perception, Sylvia, yes, if I change for both of the courses. But again, I haven't decided yet. Any other question that is urgent? If not, is it okay that we continue into my office hours? Okay. And then again, I have 4 office hours, and we can talk on the phone, text me anytime, and we can schedule. I am already scheduling with the synchronous students at different times outside my office hours. I am here at your disposal. This is my top priority. All right. The curving, of course, we are curving everything. Like for every grading, we are curving all courses. Again, the theoretical assumption, is that all classes across, between years, the students are equally talented. So if there are differences in the average of the distribution of the grades between classes or between recitations, it means that it's only the difference between either more easier or more difficult exams, or maybe different criteria of a specific TA. So yes, we move all the distributions of all grades to a common, to the same what is assumed to be an accepted average of grades for students in this course. All right? Thank you, Paulina. I'm doing my best. I hope we'll manage. My only worry is how long it will take after the semester for me to end to finish the grading. And you, I'm sure you guys are always so patient that you play along. The real problem will be the seniors that they need their grades. So, but apart from that, it will be okay. It will be okay. And now the end, the content of our last lectures is the best part. Sure. Okay, and so stay with me after and let's talk, let's discuss together about all the technical details. So if you allow me, I want, don't be Katrina, let's talk on the phone later, okay? Let's talk. I know you're graduating. Don't worry, let's talk on the phone later. So, with your permission, let's jump into the content, all right? So, I hope, I slept only 4 hours, which is okay, but I hope it will not be too messy, this lecture, because I prepared it a little bit less than I wanted. And I wanted because this is the content that I'm most enthusiastic because it connects. It's the most important part for us to understand humans and how they think, and how we think and how we perceive things, and it connects to all the big stuff that I started to make you crazy in the beginning with all the metaphysics and all the etc. And we never know when whenever we have an answer, it's an illusion. It means that we must find a better question, and the fact that evolution is what happened, and when we ask why, we have to find an answer, and when we find an answer, we assume a priori that things are the way they are because there was a master plan, and then we try to understand what we observe about humans under the rubric, under the assumption that it serves for something. And then we close our options and we fail to observe it freely. Everything, now in the end, I want to connect it better. So so let's see what happens today, and if I'm not satisfied, I will come back and I will readdress things that we talked today. Anyways, everything is connected from now until the end, which is decision making and etc. All right. So I urge you to interrupt me, to ask questions, to participate. And I'm Israeli. I feel offended if people don't interrupt me. If people don't interrupt me aggressively, I feel that I feel rejection. But I know how it is with the Zoom, so I don't take it personally. All right. So today I have to share my screen. Sorry. And share sound. All right. Can you see it? Yes? Good. Good. The chat, I just want to see. Sorry. Where's the chat? Oh, here is the chat. Sorry. If in the middle you write something in the chat and I fail to see it, talk please. All right. I'm going to remind you the four main points about deductive reasoning. Then we are going to talk about confirmation bias, extremely important for our lives. We are going through to understand what is the inductive reasoning. We are going to talk about causality, regression to the mean. I have no words to describe how much is important. And illusory correlations. All right. And we are going to understand again today, or maybe next time we are going to, and you already understand this first sentence that I offered you in the beginning of the semester. Any piece of knowledge is a tentative, temporary narrative that we consciously or unconsciously adopt, and we cannot not adopt narratives. And they are all relevant under very specific circumstances, and it doesn't matter if we are aware of it or not. And we cannot not adopt these narratives, because we cannot not try to make sense of the universe. No narrative is fundamentally true. We already saw it from many different ways. Today we'll again revisit, and I'm talking about Popper. But it doesn't mean that they are not useful. And this is prediction. This is all we have. All right. So deductive reason, we saw that there are four main forms: affirming the antecedent, denying the antecedent, affirming the consequent, denying the consequent. The first one, the important one, is what philosophers termed as modus ponens. So for all of them, I remind you, we have the same form. If P, then Q. We have two events, P and Q. If P happens, this is the premise, the major premise. Assuming that we all agree that if event P occurs, then event Q also occurs. So everything is under the premise if P then Q. So the first one, modus ponens, says if we observe P, can we conclude that the event Q will follow? Yes. This is the straightforward one because it follows time. It's P occurs, Q occurs. We feel comfortable with that. We can, when it's a familiar realm, it's really easy for us to apply it and to see the validity of this conclusion. If a war is going on, the premise is if a war is going on, event 1, event 2, people will die. We observe war, therefore we validly conclude that people will die. Sordid example that every time, well. Anyways, so the second one, modus tollens, also valid, is a little bit more difficult for untrained and also for trained people to intuitively apply it, because we have to go back in time, we have to go backwards. If P then Q, we don't observe Q, therefore P didn't occur. It's valid, right? Nobody disagrees. We all see it. If it is war, people will die. No one died. It means that war is not going on. Now the two problematic ones, the two that actually understanding them, training to recognize them is very valuable, very important, very useful for our lives. Not only as etc. Not only for people that use it professionally, for everything, for watching MSNBC. If P then Q, P didn't occur, can we conclude that Q will not occur? So when we appraise it regarding a familiar realm, it's easy for us. If it's war, people will die. It's not war, people won't die. No, people can die for infinite alternative independent reasons. We cannot conclude that people that will not observe Q, that people won't die, right? This is invalid. This is a logic mistake that we find all the time everywhere. And the second one, so this was denying the antecedent, okay? This is only the terminology. So the first one, modus ponens, is affirming. Antecedent is the first event, consequent is the second event. So affirming the antecedent is valid, denying the consequent is valid, denying the antecedent is not valid because the consequent may be a consequence of other things, not only the antecedent of our premise. And the last one is affirming the consequent. If P then Q, we observe Q. Can we conclude that P occurred? No, again, for a familiar realm, it's easy. If it's war, people will die. People died. People can die for endless reasons. We cannot be sure that it was because of war. So it's an invalid conclusion. And the problem with these last two is when... Yes?
When you mean like familiar realm, I'm not sure I understand. Like, do you mean familiar realm like we're used to seeing people die when they have war, and so we wouldn't be able to like refute the antecedent?
What I mean by familiar and familiar realm is a realm when we talk about the elements, the events, and the connection between them, about things that we are familiar with, that we...
But how does that help us with like that specific example? Like you were saying, when with familiar realms, it leads us to then which conclusion?
What I meant is like this. When, and last time, before, it was 3 lectures ago, before we yes. When I presented to you only if P then Q, Q therefore P, without the example here. For any untrained person in logics, it's difficult to visualize the problem.
Oh, okay, I get it.
If we talk
so it's our ability to like put examples and metaphors
exactly.
to understand.
Exactly. If we are talking about quarks and protons, it's difficult. When we talk about effects, even with pseudo-familiar realms, we talk so many examples in cognition and in perception all the time. We feel when attention, memory, it's our memory. We feel familiar, but how the effects they connect, it's unfamiliar. We don't know. It's exactly what we are trying to understand, how memory works. And then we fall into these invalid conclusions because it's unfamiliar. Wait, if we observe a recency effect and recency effect is connected to this, can we conclude that it means that it was not this? Then we fall. In the example, if it's war, people will die, we can easily visualize the connection. So this jumping between familiar and unfamiliar sometimes allows us to understand the logical construct behind our rationale, our argumentation.
This is directly connected to how like researchers make conclusions about like new models, for example, like of memory, and how they can connect things based on causality when they don't necessarily exist, but just because they interpret it like in familiar realms.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And there is and we'll see. We already saw again. We'll see a big problem with familiar realms. When we feel too familiar, we don't feel compelled to try to falsify. We end up reaffirming. We'll see it soon. So the fourth one, also invalid, and when we are in unfamiliar realm, we all fall, even trained people. All right, so these are the four. I remind you another term used for deductive reason is syllogism. Okay, here another example. So this is the modus ponens. If you get injured, you are in pain. This is the major premise. Assuming that we agree with this sentence, if we observe injure, can we conclude that you will feel pain? Yes, it's valid, right? No doubts about it. If we are denying the consequent, the same premise. If you get injured, you will feel pain. If you are not in pain, well, injured you were not. These two are valid. The two invalid ones, denying the antecedent, if you get injured, you are in pain. If you did not get injured, can we conclude you are not in pain? No, you can feel pain for endless different independent reasons, right? And the last one, if you get injured, you are right in pain. If you are in pain, can we be sure that it's because you were injured? No. We all agree? I will move on. Let me remind you something that I said last time, and this is important for us. Null effects in science. Theoretically, null effects are denying the consequent, right? If we assume, we say, we have a manipulation that derives, let's say it validly derives from a theoretical proposition, a narrative, and we say, okay, we expect, according to this theory, we expect that if we do this, we should observe, in our experiments, we should observe that. And then we don't observe. We have no statistical significant difference between the two conditions. And then we say, oh, it means that the theory, the hypothesis, is wrong. Because we are denying the consequent. The consequent is the difference between the conditions. And if we didn't observe the difference, it means that not P, not difference, not theory. But in science, as much as logic-wise it is valid, we cannot assume, we cannot conclude that, because we are humble in terms of how much we can account for our methodological control of the situation, of our understanding of all possible mediators. So take any the Stroop effect, one of the most reliable effects. Whatever you try with the Stroop effect, if you remember, like red in green letters takes longer to say the color of the letters green than if it's red in color red. It always works. You can, okay, but we never know whether there are differences in the size and in the way and the color and the hue, and maybe the instructor, the experimenter and the instructions, and maybe so many endless different, and maybe our participants, we had by chance, it may happen, right? Statistics, you already know enough about statistics that you may end up having a batch of participants that they are a little bit different than the assumed average participant. So we never know why we don't observe a difference. So we cannot conclude even though it would be valid. You understand? This is very important. Why null effects? We cannot say anything. We cannot conclude our hypothesis was wrong when we don't observe a statistical significant difference. Is it clear for everybody? This is something that sometimes is hidden behind great experiments, best researchers, in the best journals, sometimes in more complicated constructs, logical constructs. There are null effects, and there are day-to-day heated discussions about whether some conclusion is based on a null effect or no, or how can you circumvent null effect. This is a big open thing, all right? Sorry. And as I said last time, even though in the literature it's the bon ton, the accepted discourse is that logic is not, let's say these 4 cases of deductive reason is not something very useful for our daily life. This is useful when you write code, when you deal with mathematics, in philosophy, but in our daily life this is not really relevant. And I strongly suggested last time that I disagree with that. I agree that modus ponens and modus tollens, the 2 valid ones, trying to convince people by a logical construct is not really a useful way. Convincing people is difficult, it doesn't matter. Changing people's ideas, whatever, conclusions about big things. This is a hairy thing. But I suggested, and I see it all the time, that raising questions about the fallacy of using these 2 invalid conclusions is something that people understand, and it is useful. When someone suggests you, presents, proposes, strongly holds a very strong opinion about something, a construct, within which there is one of these two invalid deductions, and when you explain to someone this invalidity, people understand. And raising questions in people's mind maybe is the best, the best we can get. And it's a big thing. So don't underestimate the power of using logic, especially these two, in daily life. Let's move on. We also saw that people, especially untrained people in logic, but also trained people feel people are attracted to perceived plausibility. People will choose what feels plausible more than logic. And irrespective of the questions I raised last time about this specific famous work, the methodological, if you remember, you can go back to the Evans, but since Evans himself and all his colleagues are very serious people, I am sure, I'm just not aware, they have addressed the questions I raised last time. So I didn't mean to raise questions regarding the fact that people choose plausibility over logic, okay? And the last thing that we saw was the susceptibility of people to fall into the atmosphere effect. People visualize what they perceive as probable picture. So the example here was, all students live in Tucson. Some people who live in Tucson are millionaires. Some of the students are millionaires. So this is what most people feel as plausible, as probable, which is this picture that there is some shared area between millionaires and students, all of them in Tucson, but that is not a valid logical conclusion. These can be absolutely different people with inside Tucson. Confirmation bias. Okay, now pay attention, because I will ask you, I'll give you, you have to solve a question. And this is very important for everything, for life, for science, for everything, for MSNBC. And I'm sure you already heard the term confirmation bias, because it is very pervasive in everything. So this is Watson selection task. It's probably the most famous one. And those, if you already know, if you are already aware, please don't give the answers in the chat, okay? Okay, so you have 4 cards on a table. Each card has a letter on one side and a number on the other side. This is the original experiment, okay? Your task is to assess this rule, whether this rule is correct, if it works, if this rule can predict. The rule, the hypothesis, the theory is, the premise is, if a card has a vowel on one side, P, event 1, then it has an even number on the other side, Q. If vowel, then even number. That's the rule. Now, This has been the law of the land in the last 2 millennia. It has been working, this rule. We, humanity, have been accepting this rule. I'm not saying literally, figuratively. Your task is to assess, to check whether this rule, which has been valid until today, whether now it is still valid, okay? It's not the first time that you are trying to see if this rule has any validity. No, this rule has been working for 5,000 years. You are now tasked to assess whether it is still valid. All right? So you have to turn over 2 cards in order to assess whether this rule is true or not. You have these 4 answers. I'll launch the poll. Where is it? Can you see it?
Yep.
Go for it. Very interesting. Okay, listen. Think again. Think again. I'll give some minutes. This is important. Think and rethink. Most of you are not getting it right. Rethink. You want to check if this rule is still valid. You have to choose the 2 cards that... No, don't answer in the chat. Answer in the poll, please. I'll give you 2 more minutes. Please rethink. I can see the answers. Most of you, the huge majority, is wrong. You cannot change? So wait. I will end and restart it. And I'll do it again. Let's see. But don't, please take 5 more minutes before you answer. Relaunch. Relaunching will clear. Yes, okay. Anew. Wait. Think about it. Whether the 2 cards you are choosing are the only 2 cards that will really assess whether the rule is right. I'll be back in a moment. Only 60% answered so far. Why? The other... are you still thinking, or you will not answer? How can I know whether you still want time? Okay, people are still voting. Okay, you're getting better. I want to tell you, first of all, that when I first time did it, I got it wrong. Okay. So now 40% of you got it right. 39% of you got it right. Let's see it. How many of you already knew this task? Anyone? You did. And did you, Paulina, and did you answer in the poll?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's I see that. Let's go through the options. Okay. E. If vowel, then even number. If we turn E, if vowel, this is a vowel, then even number. If we see an even number, this is affirming. If P, then Q. This, if we have a P, we must have Q. We must have an even number. This is modus ponens, right? This is the obvious one. If we don't have a number on the others, an even number on the other side, we have refuted our rule. Meaning, this card is useful for us. 7. If vowel, then even number. This is an odd number. This is not Q. Can we conclude, can we for sure conclude that if the premise is right, can we for sure conclude that we don't have a vowel on the other side? Yes, this is valid. This is modus tollens, denying the consequent. 7 is not the consequence. So we must have not a vowel on the other side. So turning E and 7, both are valid assessments of our rule. If we don't observe what we expect according to the rule, we can logically refute. That's the answer. C. Why not 4? 4 is the consequent, right? It's an even number. If we observe 4, if people... Now, Maya, you asked about familiar and unfamiliar. This is, let's say, for the sake of our discussion, this is an unfamiliar situation. Now look, if we translate it to a familiar realm, if war, then people die. People are dying. Can we for sure conclude that we are going through a war? No, people can die for God knows how many different reasons. So this rule, if a vowel then even number, can remain valid for whichever letter we have on the other side. Right? Everybody agrees? We can turn the 4 and whatever comes, it cannot refute this rule. So 4 is a not useful test for our rule. Anyone? M.
Professor?
Yes?
Okay, I have a super quick question.
Yes.
So like, it says if vowel, then even number, right? Right.
Okay, yeah, E is a vowel, right? And then if you flip it over and it's an even number, then it like says that this rule is correct. But then why would four not be a vowel? Like if you did like 4 and 7, why wouldn't four be a valid thing? Because if you flip four and it is a vowel on the other side, wouldn't that make the statement true? And then if you flip four and it's not a vowel, wouldn't that make it not true? Just like if you flip E.
Because whatever, I understand what you're saying, and I'll answer in two different ways. The first answer to your question is that whatever we have on the other side of 4 cannot refute our rule. Okay? We learned nothing about the word by turning 4, because whatever we have on the other side, this rule can be valid or invalid. You understand why?
No, because like isn't that what we're trying to do?
No, we are trying to assess whether this rule is valid. Now, if we have a vowel on the other side, this rule may be valid and may be invalid. Right? It may be invalid if we have a vowel. If we don't have a vowel on the other side, this rule may be valid, because we can have even numbers for other reasons, not only for a vowel, according to this rule. If we do have a vowel on the other side, we still do not. Okay, so this card, what we observed here was according to the rule, but we still don't know if this rule is valid for all cases. Wait. If we were trying to understand what is the rule, let's say we have 5 optional rules and we have no idea which rule is the rule that governs the universe, then any card is valid to understand. That would be the induction part. That would be collecting information about the world and trying to see what patterns exist. Now, if we already assumed a pattern and we want to assess whether this pattern is still valid, turning this card tells us nothing, because whatever we see on the other side, it cannot refute it. It can only not refute it. Validating it again, we don't need it. It's already the rule for the last 10,000 years. You understand? It may sound like a nuance, but you understand the difference? If we turn these cards, it's true, and we observed, and the rule is sustained, it's true that we still cannot know if for all cards in the world it's still valid. But for our cards, so far we have no reason to refute. If we observe, if we have an even number here, we have no reason to refute it. But if we have an odd number here, we can refute it. Here, if we have a consonant on the other side, we can refute it. Here, whatever appears on the other side, we cannot refute it. The same for M.
Okay, I get it.
You get it now? Because
Yes.
Okay, so these 4 and M are the invalid affirming the consequent. People are dying. Here is people are dying. Can we be sure what if we have war or not war on the other side? No. People can die for endless reasons. We cannot assess, we cannot challenge this rule. The same for here. Right? We are not having war. People may be dying, people may be not dying. Nothing that can refute this rule. Is it clear for everybody? This is really important. All right. And this is every day. Now again, what this very simple task is unfamiliar. It's an unfamiliar realm. We cannot visualize in our experience from the world. When suddenly we talk about people dying and war or feeling pain and injured, suddenly it becomes clear why this is not a useful test. All right? So usually, I don't know if this is the original, I suppose it is, yes, the original experiment. 53% chose E, 46% E and 4. And only 4% the correct answer. You guys gave a 39% answer right. And one of the reasons, I don't know, maybe because I emphasized in the instructions that you are to assess whether this rule is still valid. I'm guessing, but I suppose that if I would only ask you to test the rule without emphasizing that until now this rule has been right, and which I was pushing you to the feeling, to the attitude, to your position as I want to check, I want to falsify, I want to challenge the rule. Without doing that, I suppose, well, this is a known effect. This is known. This same test, if you give to two group of participants, in one case you emphasize that the task is to challenge the rule, and the other one is to check the rule without emphasizing. When you don't emphasize your need to falsify it, people fall much more into what is called confirmation bias, which is people including all of us, we feel more comfortable when we reinforce the order, the picture of the universe that we already have. And this is not metaphysical talking. This is everyday life. This is in science. And if you remember, we talked about Popper. So the first time I told you about Popper was the logical conclusion that we can never understand fully anything. And I gave the example that a good doctor can prescribe a medication, but he or she can never really answer why, because at a certain point only a biologist, and a biologist at a certain point only a chemist, and a chemist at a certain point only a physicist, and physicists have no idea why the quarks do what they do. So the understanding, answering why does not exist by logic, okay? So all we have is prediction. The best case, we can predict things, right? So all our narratives are, in the best case, those that are good, that can predict now and here, they are incomplete by definition. So this was the first time that I told you why we need all the time, if we want to further knowledge, we need to try to falsify. Because anyways, we only have a limited picture of anything. Right? And this is a second example. This is why we need to always focus top down, because our heart wants to confirm what the universe that we know. We feel uncomfortable to change things. That's why we either watch only MSNBC or only Fox News, because we hear, irrespective, I'm saying a cliche, irrespective of whether they are truly, but they are, yes, it's a rehearsal of the order of the universe that we hold, and it confirmates. We seldom, although we do sometimes, have in these situations challenges to our order. We are attracted to confirm how things are. And in science, we must, and in everything, the more you do, but it's uncomfortable to strive to falsify. Are we all here? How much time do we have? Let me see. Okay, it took longer, but it's okay, because I find it very important. I have a personal story, a heavy one to tell you about it. My mother, she grew up in, it was after the Holocaust, all the mess that was. She grew up in a kindergarten, in an orphanage. And her mother, my grandmother, she died when my mother was born. And she was 21. So my mother, orphanage, nobody talked to her, nobody explained. She did not know any other option than, and this is relevant for all of us all the time, we have only one picture of everything. We cannot not be in a bubble. Now look the bubble that my mother was. And it's impressive. And we are all in the same situation. So my mother grew up with the logical conclusion, with the obvious narrative that she, like her mother, will die when she gives birth. My mother, she never realized that she held this very strong understanding of the universe. She never realized, she never even talked, nobody talked to her. She was married to my father, and then she delayed her pregnancy for 7 years. Yeah, we are talking about early 70s. This in those days. They married, my mother was, they were young. And she delayed because she was enjoying life. What I'm telling you, she realized in her 30s. One day she realized all this story. And she was enjoying life. She didn't want to get pregnant because she knew that, okay, she was okay with that. It was obvious to her she will die when she gives birth. But let's delay. So she got pregnant. So it took 7 years since the marriage. And then, and it was me, the end of her, I was the end of her life. And then she gave birth, and then she didn't die. She obviously concluded that, okay, it's not the birth, it's the age. She will die when she's 21. And then she didn't die. And only in her 30s, one day, she realized that she never had the opportunity. And my mother is not far away from crazy. She's logic. She's a knowledgeable person. She's not she doesn't believe in God. She's not a mystic person, but she never had the opportunity to falsify the bubble that she was within. And we are all in the same situation. We are all in a bubble. We cannot not be in a bubble. We cannot have a picture of the world that is coherent. And we can only have one picture. That's it. Questions? About the Holocaust? No? It was a mess. Talk to me. Sorry, it was, I shouldn't have told you that, sorry. A little bit too heavy. No, but it's, you know what? I'm happy I told you that story because I suppose that you will always remember it. And I hope you will always remember in the context of we cannot not be in a bubble and we are doomed to be attracted to confirmation bias, and in order to further knowledge, we have to strive towards falsifiability, and that can only be done with efforts, intellectual and emotional efforts. It's not easy to try to falsify what we think and feel comfortable with what we think the universe is. Thank you, Taylor. Great. Yes. Thank you. And then, where is that sentence in the beginning? You see, this is relevant every time, anywhere, for everyone. Yes, she will watch. Yes, she will watch. She will watch. She will watch. My mother is very funny, and she will, for sure, find something cynical and funny from this story. Even though, yeah, it's a very personal story. Yeah, I'm usually cynical about everything. About this, no. My friends, I didn't plan, but maybe with this heavy Holocaust story, suddenly you are less worried about the technical details of the EDM. But let's talk about it. So maybe let's do like this. We have now 1 hour of my office hours. Can I take 5 minutes break, and then we continue, and then, but before I go, stop share. But before I go, is there anyone that needs to go somewhere and would like to talk to me before my 5 minutes break? No? Okay, so I'll take 5 minutes. I'll be back soon, and then let's talk about all the little things of life. It's not little things, I'm kidding. It's big things, the end. But we'll solve everything. We'll have fun. Okay, so see you soon.